This episode of the Device Talks Weekly podcast is brought to you by Device Talks Tuesdays, a weekly series of seminars featuring medtech leaders. Join us this Tuesday at 4 p.m. for a discussion led by Sunrise Labs. For more information, go to DeviceTalks.com. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Hey everyone, this is Tom Salemi. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Device Talks Weekly podcast.
Good to be here, Tom.
Woohoo! There he is.
We are here.
Chris Newmarker is back. Sean Woolley did an excellent job filling in for you, Chris.
Sean did a great job.
He did. I think he wants one of our seats on the podcast, Chris.
Hey.
We got to watch out.
Hey, it's good. The more the merrier. Getting everybody on our staff doing this. So, a good deal.
Actually, next week, we may have everyone on our staff on it. So let's
here we go.
Move toward that.
Sounds like a plan.
We'll sing at the end. We'll have a very good kumbaya moment.
We'll have to figure out a good song to sing together. That sounds good.
This land is your land, perhaps?
This land is your land. I like that. There we go. I like her.
All right. We'll get working on that.
Shall we move into we shall move into the Newmarkers Newsmakers?
All right. I have a new sound for us, Chris Newmarker.
It's hot off the teletype.
That's right. This is you just rip this sheet right off that printing machine thingy that used to go tat-a-tat-tat-tat.
I think I might have a paper cut now, but we'll be fine. We'll be fine. We'll get this. We'll do this.
Well, hold that paper high, Chris Newmarker, and tell me what is number 5, the fifth most read article on Mass Device this week.
Number 5 on the list, we have GE Healthcare announced that it's made its Serena Bright biopsy technology available in the U.S. And this is a contrast enhanced guided biopsy solution, and this is used on the same mammography equipment, same exam room, but this is supposed to boost breast cancer screening. So kind of like an interesting breast cancer screening tech that's now available here in the U.S.
We got to get some GE Healthcare folks on this podcast. We haven't really brought them on board. We will this week. I'm very happy to say we'll have our first representative from Philips.
That's great.
Yes, Chris Landon. He's the Senior Vice President and Business Leader of Image-Guided Therapy Devices at Philips, and also shoveled snow this weekend because he's in Minneapolis or Minnesota. He'll be on to tell us about his move to Philips and what Philips is up to. So I'm happy to be shining some light onto that company. So.
Great. I would say the snow shoveling builds character. So
what is our number 4 Newmarkers Newsmakers?
Well, number 4 on the list is Merit Medical agreed to pay $18 million to resolve allegations that they paid kickbacks to physicians, and this was actually a whistleblower lawsuit. Their former chief compliance officer sued them. The U.S. Justice Department joined in the whistleblower case, but they've now paid up $18 million to settle this. Another medtech kickback case. Yeah,
unfortunate. Another legal settlement as well. I wonder how that was impacted by the pandemic slowdown. Maybe not at all. And then moving on now to number 3 on Newmarkers Newsmakers.
Number 3 is the first article from our new Pharma editor, Brian Bunce, who we got Brian on board. Brian's actually an old colleague of mine from my days at UBM, now in Pharma, and we're just really excited to see everything it's going to do for us with drug discovery, development, and pharmaceutical processing world. And right out the gate, he had a story about where the pharma industry is spending its money in the presidential race. And historically, they've the industry has supported Republican candidates, but this year they're giving triple to Biden versus Trump.
Wow.
So kind of real change, and it kind of also reflects what we've seen in the medical device industry. A lot of medical device industry insiders, the money's going a lot more to Biden than Trump. So kind of a change.
I wonder how much of that is brought on or driven by just the interaction over the vaccine development. It's just been such a wild ride, and I know our number one item we'll sort of have to deal with the FDA. So before we go into number 2, though, and you're mentioning that bringing Brian on board, take one moment to tell our listeners just how many different sites, what are all of our sites on the life sciences side? Because we offer so much. And this isn't a commercial. I don't think people really know how many different sites we have. We have Mass Device, which we talk about all the time. We have medical design and outsourcing, which I mentioned probably second, but there's much, much more.
Yep, and that's kind of our MDO is really our place where we do more deep dives into the technology, into the technologies enabling innovation. We have a site about medical tubing extrusion.
It's amazing to me.
We have which is hugely important actually. We have so many or minimally invasive procedures that use catheters to deliver technology inside the body. So it's a very important site. Drug delivery business news, that's kind of like covering the place where pharma and medtech are coming together and all these combo products. We've got our pharma sites. We've got drug discovery and development and pharmaceutical processing world, which we acquired last year, and now we have an editor dedicated to them.
So I just want all you folks to realize just how powerful Chris Newmarker is. He oversees this entire empire.
Wow. Just even you saying that, Tom, made me feel like, wow, I've got some responsibility here.
Now I'm nervous.
Don't make me nervous, Tom.
All right, let's move on to number 2 on the Newsmakers list.
Well, number 2 is FDA issuing an EUA for 2 at-home COVID-19 tests. These tests are from Eurofins and DxTerity Diagnostics. Getting some at-home tests available. That could definitely improve the situation. We're still just
it certainly would help the holidays, wouldn't it? If you could have Grandma tested before she came in the door.
There you go. Here, Grandma, take this test, and we can actually have turkey. That would be great.
Yeah, we'll see where that goes. All right, here we go.
All right, can we? I guess more drum roll or something like that. But yes,
we'll cue the teletype machine.
Here we go. Our number 1 story is based off something that just came out of Politico, which is that Politico has about a half a dozen. It's anonymous sources, but they've got what they say is a half a dozen current and former administration officials who are saying that HHS Secretary Alex Azar has been openly discussing, removing Dr. Stephen Hahn as the FDA commissioner, which I reached out to FDA, and a spokesperson there said in an email that, Hahn and Azar have a good relationship and they're talking all the time. But, it's definitely raises some questions. It is Politico.
Amazing.
Yeah, and Politico said that the sources were saying that probably wasn't going to happen before the election just because of the optics of it. But it kind of seems like it comes down to the FDA just pretty much Hahn's been very open about the fact that we need to really go through the data here, have 2 months worth of safety data before we really look at granting EUAs for COVID-19 vaccines. And he actually was really touting these open advisory committee meetings they're going to be having to go over the data around the vaccines, saying they're going to be really open about the science behind this. But the president was saying he wanted a vaccine before the election. So here we are.
It's remarkable that this could happen, that sort of maneuvering is in place. And it was surprising to me that it's happening in October before an election. But your point about might not happen until after the election does make more sense. But still, it is some very interesting times that we're living in, for sure. Well, great Newsmakers, Chris. And now let's get into our interview with Chris Landon, Senior Vice President and Business Leader of Image-Guided Therapy Devices at Philips. This keynote conversation is brought to you by Mass Device and Medical Design and Outsourcing, the number 1 and number 2 sources for online medtech news and analysis. Go to massdevice.com and medicaldesign&outsourcing.com for the latest news and trends in the medtech industry. Chris Landon, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
I'm excited to learn more about Philips, but I wanted to learn a little bit about yourself first. I haven't for a while opened up a podcast interview with this question, but I'm just curious as to how you found your way into the medtech industry. What was your entry point?
I came into the medtech world about 17 years ago. I had the opportunity to be mentored by the former CEO of Medtronic, Bill George, while I was doing my MBA in a little school called IMD in Lausanne, Switzerland. And over the course of that mentorship, Bill showed me a video at one point, a video of a gentleman who was suffering from Parkinson's disease, who had been implanted with a Medtronic neurostimulator. It turned out that this person was a virtuoso pianist, elderly gentleman, virtuoso pianist whose Parkinson's had completely debilitated him. He couldn't play. And I remember seeing this video and having that device turned on and watching that man's tremors just fade away, and him sitting down at a piano and just playing this beautiful piece of music. And I realized at that moment what a wonderful industry this is when you can combine the innovation and the innovative thinking of engineers, the kind of innovative thinking that an icon like Earl Bakken inspires, with the know-how and the insights that physicians have. And they can create solutions that allow people to continue to give their gifts back to the world. I was totally inspired by that. So I signed up for my first medtech job. I started at Medtronic in 2003. And I had no idea what I was doing. Before that, I was in consulting, mostly in financial services. Mm-hmm. So I jumped around. I was in healthcare economics for a while. I did strategy for a while.
How did you end up in Switzerland? I'm curious. Where are you from?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
I graduated from the University of Washington in 1995 with an idea of getting involved in the whole .com craze. And that's how I got into consulting, mostly with financial services companies. I was doing things like working with online brokerages and that kind of thing. But as most stories go, I met a woman and she didn't quite like that consulting lifestyle. So I decided to go back and do my MBA. And I had a particular mentor who was familiar with European schools, and he thought I might fit very well there. And I was lucky enough to get admitted. And so that's how it happened. And it just happened to coincide with the year that Bill George retired from Medtronic. So It was kind of meant to be that way.
What a great experience. I got into B2B publishing the late 90s. So all my friends went to .com and I went into medtech, and glad I did at the time.
I was going to say, how are they doing now, right?
I'm very happy with my choice. So did you, through that connection with Bill George, is that how you wound up at Medtronic, or was it a completely different path?
No, that's obviously, he didn't push me specifically to Medtronic. He inspired me to look hard at medical devices. And I certainly evaluated opportunities with other companies as well. But I didn't really have a ton of built-in skills for medical devices yet. And so I think some of the relationships that he helped to usher in at Medtronic helped get me there. And it was a great experience for me. I had the chance to try on so many different jobs, ranging from strategy and M&A to healthcare economics to sales. I was in sales in the world of spine for a few years before I started getting my first experiences as a general manager. And so it was just a wonderful experience for me. I felt like I got the chance to develop across all aspects of what makes medical device companies work. And I think that certainly feeds into how I can function as a leader today.
I'm staring at the snow in your backyard. So you are in Minnesota. Is that how you ultimately landed there? Or were you there from the start at Medtronic in Minnesota, the start, or did you move around a little bit?
Yeah. So my wife's Texan. I had to convince her that we needed to move to Minnesota to get started here. But yeah, I started my career in 2003 by moving to Minneapolis and joining the cardiac rhythm group of Medtronic. Then I moved on to a few different assignments. They rotated me around through a sales assignment in Las Vegas, as well as a nice 4.5-year stint in the spinal organization in Memphis, before bringing me back to Minneapolis.
Oh, same, roughly the same climate as Texas, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, give or take.
It's not how cold it is; it's just how you dress.
Exactly, that's very true. So you were at Medtronic up until your time at Philips. Why was that move made? It's not unusual to see that kind of move, but sometimes you see folks stay at Medtronic for life. Sometimes you see them go into the startup world. What made Philips enticing?
It was a great experience at Medtronic. Wonderful people, and certainly I learned the importance of mission and having that common touchstone that everybody in the organization can tie into. The Philips opportunity came to me just about a year and a half ago. And it was really born many years before when the CEO of Philips, Frans van Houten, was appointed in 2011. He started the company on this great transformation from going to kind of a conglomerate that had all sorts of interests to a real healthcare solutions focused company. And things like the lighting division, the consumer electronics divisions, these things got spun off during his tenure. And now what we have with the company is this healthcare focused entity that really wants to change the total continuum of care to one that's more efficient, more effective, and drives better outcomes for patients. Medical devices is a big part of that strategy. So in 2015, with no medical devices in the portfolio, Philips made their first big acquisition. That was the Volcano Corporation in 2015. They followed that up in 2017 with an acquisition of Spectranetics, which moved them more solidly into the world of therapy. And where we're at today is continuing through that transformation with these two great acquisitions now coming together as a image-guided therapy device business, one that we want to bring to a global and scalable level. And so when Philips first approached me, I think they were looking for somebody with that blue chip medical device company experience who knew what globalized and scalable looks like for a medical device company. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was just an opportunity for me to continue on my own personal journey of leadership and to take the skills and the insights that I had learned from a company like Medtronic and bring him to an entity that was thirsty for that, and to be paired with a CEO who certainly was ready to invest more heavily, both in organic innovation as well as expansion into other adjacent clinical areas. So it was just a great fit. On top of all that, the opportunity to come to a company with such a great culture, 129 years of history, it felt like an environment that I could succeed in and that I'm supported in. So it was just a match made in heaven. I'm very happy to be here. I've been in the position now for a year and a half, and I'm already starting to get a sense of the successes that are coming from applying this type of thinking to this transformational vision that our CEO has.
How large is your group presently? And if you can tell me, employees, and what areas, what therapies do you really target?
So image-guided therapy devices, our medical device division, is part of the image-guided therapy organization within Philips, which is one of the four large business clusters in the company. The number of employees that directly support devices is roughly 3,700 employees. We are as an image-guided therapy organization, which is a combination of medical devices and imaging systems, we are in about 7 clinical categories. But the devices themselves, we're only in 3 categories. Those are coronary, peripheral vascular, and a little bit of structural heart.
So and this has roughly been born, this entity has been born and grown over the last 5 years, planned and grown from that start in 2015. Medtech is an older industry, and we can name most of the players who have been up and down first, second, and third for a number of years. Where do you see Philips sort of fitting into the broader medtech population now? And where do you? I have a sense of where you want it to fit in the future, but maybe we can get into some specifics as to how you get there.
So I think you're right. MedTech itself is old, and there's a lot of categories of medical devices that I think have become commoditized, but have definitely become entrenched. Where we want to go with Philips is we want to focus on procedural innovation in this image-guided / minimally invasive space, where optimizing that interface between medical devices and these enabling imaging systems can lead to more cost efficiency or can lead to better outcomes. Mm-hmm. So this is ultimately where we're going. And the advantage that we bring to the table is that obviously we're the only medical device company that has its own imaging company right attached to us in the same division, which allows us to both optimize interfaces for devices that are already on the market, but also gives us a point of view of where the puck is going. What are the imaging and information system technologies that physicians are going to be using to guide surgery in the future? And how do we begin to optimize medical devices to take advantage of that? So think about things like artificial intelligence or augmented reality. Philips has actually half the R&D engineers in the entire company are hardware, software people. And they have very solid plans for how we're going to move into these enabling imaging and visualization technologies in the future. Mm-hmm. And we have the benefit as being part of that vision to figure out how medical devices fits into that so that we can create that full seamless experience for physicians as they try to move to more effective procedures that have better outcomes. I remember when I was in sales with our Medtronic spinal division, and I was trying to convince a particular surgeon, a neurosurgeon, to do more minimally invasive spine surgery. And I remember him telling me that he really believes in minimally invasive spine surgery. He wanted to adopt more of those procedures, but the problem was the imaging technology just wasn't there yet. And his attitude was, if I can't see it, I can't treat it. Mm-hmm. So I need to be able to see it. And I think that's the essence of the value proposition that we're trying to bring to the table. We want to make it easier for our physicians to see where they're going so they can get more precise therapies to their patients.
Do you see that you're sort of a company for the time, as in it's kind of a softball question, but as we're moving into ambulatory surgical centers, as we're looking for more minimally invasive ways to go to treat things, both at the ESCs, but also in the hospitals. I mean, is your thesis that this is the time to really be focused almost exclusively on this type of therapy, and we're going to remain 100% focused on that?
Yeah, I think for Philips, that is the story. We want to absolutely remain focused on everything that's image guided and minimally invasive. In fact, I can even tell you, I mean, we have these image guided therapy systems, cath lab systems, that are primarily used in 7 clinical domains, right? You've got coronary, peripheral, electrophysiology, structural heart, oncology, neurovascular, and spine. These are the clinical domains where we see the most innovative opportunity when it comes to minimally invasive surgery innovation. And so our devices strategies are going to track to that, to those clinical domains, constantly focused on where can we innovate procedurally to achieve some kind of outcome. Philips's framework for defining outcomes is actually organized around 4 things. We actually call that the quadruple aim. It's about improving physician experience, improving patient experience, improving cost effectiveness, improving outcomes. So that is what frames how we think about procedural innovation. And we were looking for opportunities through both inorganic and organic investment to innovate procedures, bring those things together, and deliver a more customized solution to our physicians.
So talk to me about how you get there. Where does the innovation happen on the device side of things? Are you looking at that in-house? Are you developing your own tools? Or is this something that'll be primarily built through acquisition? And we can maybe at some point talk about the recent Intact acquisition, which was big news this year.
I think the answer is a little bit of both. One of the most attractive things to me about the opportunity to come to Philips was this very strong commitment to organic innovation. In fact, if you look at Philips's overall commitment to R&D, it's roughly 10% of revenue, which I think when you apply that to more standard blue chip medical device companies, looks pretty favorable. Mm-hmm. In my own division, we have a much more significant commitment to organic R&D and clinical investments than that 10% number. So the company really walks the talk when it comes to committing itself to organic R&D. We tend to focus our organic R&D investments on those categories that we're already in. So we are taking diagnostic coronary technologies, for example, and building out next generation platforms. We just launched recently our new OmniWire pressure wire product that is a brand new type of concept, I think, for driving better outcomes in PCI procedures. That kind of innovation is going to continue to come out of our organic investment. Similarly, we're making these types of investments in clinical trials. So you may have seen, I think you all covered the recent announcement of our 1-year follow-up data on our defined PCI trial, showing the benefit of bringing pressure management into these procedures and optimizing patient outcomes. So these are the kinds of organic investments we want to make. As we look into moving into some of these adjacent clinical categories, that's where we're looking more holistically at inorganic investment. Now, that said, if we have tuck-in opportunities that make our portfolio more robust and help us define a better solution for our physicians, such as the Intact Vascular acquisition, we're going to take advantage of those opportunities as well.
Let's use Intact as a bit of a case study or an example. How did that come together? How did you come to know who they are? Obviously, they're a larger company, but how did the conversations between the two of you start?
Well, just like any other relationship that we have with companies, it starts through just being around each other, being around the same physicians, having the same types of conversations that I think every medical device company has with their physicians. What are the needs that aren't being met out there? What are the interesting new technologies that are on the horizon that might fit into a portfolio, the kind of which we are building out in our own company? You get these inputs from all sorts of sources, and obviously physicians are one of the best places to go when you're looking for ideas of things that might fit. But I've had the opportunity to get to know the CEO of Intact, Bruce Shook, over the last couple of years since I came to Philips. And we've had a few very, I think, inspiring discussions. And I think when it became super clear that there was such a complementary fit between what Philips already had in its peripheral vascular portfolio, particularly with our IVUS imaging capabilities and our StellarX drug-coated balloon product, and the need that our physicians had to treat dissections that often come from these types of interventions, the fit was obvious. And we, once we realized this was going to work very well and the cultures of our organizations fit very well, bringing that kind of deal together was actually not very difficult. So
was the initial contact, true contact or meaningful contact with you and Bruce?
I would say Philips for sure had a relationship with Intact before I had even started at Philips. Certainly getting to know the leadership at Intact made me much more comfortable with the strategy, and I think vice versa. It's always a two-way street in these types of interactions.
And what does the integration of Intact look like? How do you bring a company of that size and type into Philips?
Yeah, well, Philips has a long history of acquiring companies, and we have, I think, a very robust process for identifying where synergies exist in these types of tuck-in acquisitions, as well as how to systematically go through the process of driving an integration. What we want to do, particularly with this acquisition, is tuck it into our peripheral vascular business, and just take advantage of everything that Intact has already built. They already have a manufacturing capability. We are moving to make that a more scalable operation so that we can launch more fully. They have a great R&D organization. They have a great quality regulatory clinical set of organizations. And we're just going to tuck those into the existing structure within our existing company.
For folks who are listening and who are running companies or working at companies or just are interested in how a deal with Philips may happen, what does your business development process look like? Who is out there scouting for deals, and how does someone engage Philips to begin at least an introduction that may lead to a meaningful conversation?
We do have a set of business development professionals who are constantly out there scouting the market. We show up at all the big society meetings. Hopefully we'll have those again someday. I would really enjoy that again.
That would be nice.
But I think we make ourselves very available both to the technology side as well as to the financial side of the business development world. And I think the big thing that anyone who's listening to this podcast should know about this is that we're eager to develop deeper relationships, and we're eager to explore creative partnership opportunities. Anything that helps us continue to move down that mission of innovating minimally invasive procedures in those clinical categories that I mentioned before.
Are your sales folks, are they involved at all? They're obviously out there on the front lines. So they're sending ideas back, or?
Yeah, the sales folks, are always, they have tons of great ideas. And I can respect that. I was a salesperson too. And absolutely, they're a great interface to physicians. And as I mentioned earlier, the relationships that we have with our physicians are just top notch. And this is one of the things that I think is really significant for Philips. It's not like we started our medical device journey with nothing. We had this great footprint in the cath labs all around the world, and already had these relationships with physicians. And so the company, Philips, already had an idea where unmet needs existed and where there were opportunities to combine device and imaging systems together to solve those unmet needs. Those unmet need discussions is often where some of the best ideas come from for business development, mergers and acquisitions. So I think it's probably not unusual if a small company were to approach us, because hey, a doctor said they saw that Philips is doing this, and maybe you should check into those with that company. Those kinds of scenarios also exist.
Will you invest directly in companies?
Absolutely. We're very eager to create a pipeline of relationships and to make investments in ventures that we think have potential.
Do you see, I guess, I'm just thinking with imaging, we're seeing, is there a connection with robotics? Will we see you move into robotics, or maybe an area that a year from now, 2 months from now makes us really go, wow, that's a big pivot for Philips? Do you see yourself going into a new direction or an additional direction like that?
That might be a subject for my colleague who runs our IGT systems division. But I will say this, we really are obsessed with this idea of procedural innovation. And we want to take advantage of the footprint that we have and the space that we occupy to stay ahead of the rest of the market when it comes to using enabling technologies like artificial intelligence, like virtual reality, perhaps even robotics, to deliver on that procedural innovation promise. So yeah, I would say that it's a fair bet. We're interested in talking to people who have ideas around how robotics can be applied into those clinical areas that I mentioned in order to drive those innovations, whether it's going to drive some kind of cost efficiency or drive some kind of outcome.
Last couple of questions as we wrap up. How do you see things? How have things changed for you in the COVID era? What has changed for you and how you do your job?
Well, I'm recording this podcast from my office at home, so that's one thing.
That's one.
And my airline miles have significantly declined. I'll let everything that again sometime. And I've actually come to realize my kids have names too, so I've got all those. I think in the short term, we have experienced what every other medical device company has experienced. It's been harder for us to get to our customers. It's been harder for us to maintain just our production levels, although we've been very fortunate that we've had no major outages due to infections in any of our plants. Everything is just a little bit harder. But the good news is it's starting to normalize. And where we focus now in the short term post-COVID is just helping our physicians and hospitals restore patient confidence and getting back to the cath lab. We're very worried that patients are avoiding coming into the healthcare systems, patients who are in need. So we're partnering up. We want to work with our customers to help get the messages out to patients. Hey, we can manage you safely. Come back if you need help. In the long term, I think a lot of the things, and I listened to one of your podcasts where you had the CEO of Avail on. I think a lot of the things you're hearing from other guests that you bring onto your show, I think we agree with, right? We certainly see a new type of sales rep physician interface happening. In fact, just in July of this year, Philips acquired a Canadian company called Reacts. And we've created our own virtual presence in the cath lab type of capability, which we're already now using to deploy not just, replicating, local rep with local doctor interactions, but we're actually now replicating rep to far distant location interactions with doctors. We're also using it in medical education. So these kinds of innovations are going to stick. They're going to change the way that we interact with physicians, I think, for the better. I think Philips is completely committed to telehealth. And I think telehealth, when applied to my world of intervention, is going to change and redefine how referral pathways work and how patients get into a funnel, ultimately getting to an intervention. So we're really excited to make that happen because I think that's going to be more efficient and help drive earlier intervention, which everybody understands ultimately results in better outcomes. And then I think you already mentioned it earlier. I think in the US in particular, alternative sites of care, ASCs, office-based labs, they're going to get a lot more attention. These are going to be viewed, I think, by consumers as safer, more convenient places to go. And so it's on us as a medical device company, as a healthcare technology company, to bring solutions to those entities that are more cost effective, that reflect the economics of that environment versus a hospital environment. And we're totally committed to that as well. So those are the big changes I think happening in the post-COVID world. And
I'm saving the toughest question for last. You were pretty non-committal in your email prior to the interview about your stance on pumpkin sausages. Are you for or against? I'm
going to go against pumpkin sausage. I got to admit, when I heard you mention it in a previous podcast, I almost gagged.
Appreciate the honesty on that very, very hard-hitting question.
I can only be who I am, Tom.
Thanks for the time, and thanks for joining us on the podcast, Chris.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right, we're back. Well, thanks so much, Chris Landon, for joining us on the DeviceTalks Weekly podcast. It was great to hear from Philips. And Chris Newmarker, where can folks hear from you?
I'm on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker, and you can find me on Twitter at Newmarker. Always happy to talk with people.
I am also on LinkedIn, Tom Salemi, and I am on Twitter as well at medtech Tom. Please reach out to us. Please share this podcast on those social media channels, and when you do, make sure you tag Chris and or myself, both preferably. We'd love to be part of the conversation. We'd love to see what you all are talking about, and it is great when we do see folks sharing. I'm seeing it more and more, and we'll start calling people out and thanking them for sharing it in the next podcast. We'll start taking names and giving credit where it's due, because it's really nice to see folks who just are putting up and saying, this is a podcast I enjoy. Yeah. So thank you to everyone who does that.
I'll be buying a big stack of thank you cards soon.
All right. Well, that's a wrap, folks. Thanks again for tuning into this episode of the DeviceTalks Weekly podcast. Please subscribe. That way you'll get this podcast sent directly to you on Friday afternoons. You don't have to wait until we post it on any of our wonderful news sites, although please do visit those. And again, push the subscribe button on your podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and you'll get these podcasts sent directly to your listening device the moment that I post them on SoundCloud. Don't have to wait for us to post it on Mass Device. You don't have to wait for us to put it on LinkedIn. You'll get it first.
That's right. Push that button right now.
That's right.
Do it.
You'll be instantly wildly entertained every Friday afternoon. And who doesn't need that?
Exactly.
Who doesn't need some Friday afternoon entertainment?
Totally.
Absolutely. All right. That's it, folks. Thanks again for tuning into this episode of the DeviceTalks Weekly podcast. Join us next week. We'll put together a most excellent episode for you.
See you next week.
Godzilla!